Hello everyone, welcome to the 90's Fiesta. And boy, we have a special episode for you. Today we will talk about our favorite holiday, Halloween, but with a twist, in the year of the 90's. Today we have our usual podcastees, Justin Steer, Jenna, May, and Sarah S. But let us start off with our first topic of discussion, costumes. Justin Steer, tell us about Halloween costumes in the 90's. People are surely curious about the history. With me, I remember being a little girl in the year of the 90's. From what I talked about with my mom, I remember that I decorate the front of the house with my cousin who is named Vinny. He was just as much as an enthusiast for the holiday as I am. But let us dive into the rich history of the decade during Halloween. Let's start off with Justin Steer.
Well, Sarah, one of the most popular 90's costumes that we discussed after you read the article that I'll talk about in a moment was Beavis and Butthead masks. So the article was from bloggist Patty Poltergeist, and it was titled Halloween in the 90's, The Last Great Decade, published on October 19th of 2023 on the website Nightmare Nostalgia. Before I read that, I remember that Beavis and Butthead is popular. They mentioned Spice Girls were another major hit for costumes in the 90's. That was some of the stuff that we kind of gathered from that article. Beavis and Butthead, if you don't know, are a TV show that I believe is actually coming back soon, or is currently back online somewhere or on TV somewhere. Created by Mike Judge, about two teenage boys that are basically off the handle. So I want to know from you guys, though, what other costumes were popular in the 90's? I want to hear your opinion, Jenna.
Well, Justin, they were pretty much all pop culture based. People were in love with dressing up in Jurassic Park themed costumes, Rugrats costumes, and Scream costumes. The one with the ghost face masks? Iconic. I know many people who could not help but love this sweet kind of horror. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. I myself was Sailor Moon one year. Since cosplay wasn't a thing in the 90's, I wore a short blue skirt, a white shirt, and put my hair into pigtails. I remember none of the adults had any clue who I was, because back then, Sailor Moon was known as a kids' show. They simply gave me a confused look, my candy, and I skipped off to the next house blissfully. However, I was more often dressed up, though, as a classic witch or black cat. I also remember when my brother was too old to go trick-or-treating, he went to a Halloween party as a hunter who got mauled by a bear. This was actually, though, the inspiration for my bloody ghost costume the next year. What about you guys? Did you have a favorite costume from that time? Also, Sarah S., didn't you tell me you'd found this article written by a blogger? 51 Best 90's Halloween Costumes that will have everyone feeling nostalgic? The writer had mentioned that Scream was most nostalgic, especially to those who still wear the costumes today.
Yes, I did read that article, but before I answer that question, I want to explain that the article was by Macy Reynolds on the website called The Pioneer Woman. Now, to answer her question, I remember the Scream costumes and mask being my most favorite. So now I want to talk about my favorite Spooktober movies in the year of the 90's. Well, I didn't specifically watch this as a kid, this movie of what I'm going to talk about, which is Hocus Pocus. But from what I heard, this was in the year of the 90's, and it came out in the year of 1993. So with that said, there was a lot of good movies, and like I said, there was a movie called Hocus Pocus, which everybody likes. Up to date, our beloved Disney Channel, now a streaming service, made the movie a sequel. But it didn't live up to the expectation of the first movie, because, nothing beats the first movie, ever. The first Hocus Pocus movie was, like I said, was released in the year of 1993. It looks like our guest May has something to do or say about Hocus Pocus. May, do say a few words or two.
We want to add that the movie Hocus Pocus is about 3 witch sisters of Salem, Massachusetts: Sarah, Mary, and Winnie Sanderson. The main plot, however, is about 2 siblings named Max and Danny who go to a museum where these sisters lived. Max lit the black flame candle, which brought the witches back to life. Max thought it was a bunch of hocus pocus, meaning a lie. The witches almost cursed a bad spell on Danny, which made them look younger. Allison, a teenage girl whom he had a crush on, had gone with him. They finally meet a live talking cat named Binks, who went on the journey to fight the Sanderson teacher, and not to cause ruckus in Salem, Massachusetts. Well, I was thinking about what kids brought with them to place their candies in. It doesn't make sense that they would just carry their candies in their tiny hands.
How very interesting, guys. I got a good idea. Why don't we talk about the economy of Halloween in the 90s, such as Halloween commercials and famous candies? Jenna has a few words to say about McDonald's promoting their Halloween baskets. Now, before we get into the topic of the Halloween baskets, I want to mention that I meant to say Halloween buckets. And once again, I said baskets before, but I really meant buckets. So let's get to Jenna and see what she had to say about the Halloween buckets that McDonald's sold in the 90s.
Oh, yes, I definitely say Halloween commercials are what made it during the spooky season in the 90s. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was one commercial for Halloween that had involved McDonald's, where they'd been promoting their most famous product, the Happy Meal Halloween buckets. There were different commercials and buckets every year, of course, but in one commercial, Ronald McDonald is working with talking chicken McNuggets, dressed up as little monsters like Count Dracula or a mummy, and it seems as though they were doing science experiments of some sort.
That is very interesting of what you said, Jenna. Now, from a lot of people, I hear that throughout the 90s, people remember the buckets were like a certain theme. And there were buckets shaped like a pumpkin, a witch, and a ghost. And people in the 90s remember that there were glow-in-the-dark theme buckets, which, quite frankly, sounds pretty awesome. Now that we mentioned food, why don't we talk about popular candy in the 90s? Our podcaster, Justin, has something to say about this.
Well, one of the most famous and popular candies I remember from the 90s was Dots. According to 90s kids, they remember it being sticky, always would get stuck on the roof of your mouth. And, it sounds great, but it's wild. It would get stuck on your teeth. Sarah, it looks like you have something else to add. What do you have to say about Dots?
Indeed I do, Justin. I remember reading an article online called 10 Candies You've Definitely Got from Trick-or-Treating as a 90s thousands kid. And I remember a blogger named Toria's Tales mentioned that she remembers like the taste of like Dots, the candy, and how popular they actually were. So yeah. So we would like to wrap up this podcast, and this was very fun talking about the holiday Halloween. I want to thank everybody for like joining today. So that means Justin, May, and Jenna, and including myself. So stay tuned for the next podcast of the 90s Fiesta or not.